Hello, 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 hello. We are live. WeatherBrains episode number 459er for the 10th of November, almost 11/11. 10th of November 2014. This is the pre-show. A marvelous time where we open up our hearts. We're transparent. We share what's on our mind. We share boring personal stories, occasionally humorous anecdotes. So we are getting set to go on here in about and if you're new to this, if you want to begin with the actual show, just move the slider about 10 minutes in and you'll find it there. But we just like having people watch us get our act together for some reason. And this is when we say things we shouldn't say and get in trouble. So Bill is he's at his bookie's place. They're getting ready to gamble on some of the football games. Notice the scoreboard behind him back there. Those are the lines for the football games?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the favorites for the national championship right over here. So I'll keep those just out of sight.
There you go.
Bill.
We got Aubrey in edit booth number 2. Number 2.
You want to talk football? How about this?
How about some Packers?
Yeah, it's an Aaron Rodgers signed helmet. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John. I saw Bart Starr's wife one day last week.
Really?
And I don't know. I didn't even know this. Bart had a stroke.
Yeah, he did. Right.
He has been in the hospital. He just got out, and he's having a tough time. His wife, she apparently never left his side, and she's kind of having to feed him and try and get the rehabilitation process going on. But she said you ought to come by and see him. He loves visitors. So I said I'll swing by there because he actually lives in Hoover, which is the same suburb that the TV station is in here. So. Brian, we ought to go by and see Bart Starr one day, and we could get Bart to sign something for Dr. John.
Wow.
Yeah, let's do it.
We ought to do it.
Behind me.
Well, but no, we give you a new one. I mean, we get you something. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
He is one of the kindest men you'll ever meet.
Absolutely.
He has a heart of gold. He just loves people, and he's just so polite, and he's a great guy. And I hated that he went through all those medical problems, but his wife seemed optimistic, and she's glad he's home and he's doing better. So that's a good thing.
Good news. Good news.
Rick, has the cold front come through?
Well, let's see. You see the mesonet there?
Yeah, you're getting close.
Yeah, pretty close.
It's right on the line there. I'm 68 here in Norman right now, so it's almost here.
So this is great. We're going to have a fro pod during the show at Rick's house. This is great.
I can go out. I'll take the computer outside, and we can enjoy it all together. How about that?
I think Rick ought to go outside, take off his shirt, and we just broadcast that live as the temperature drops while he's out there shirtless, like those fans in Green Bay.
Well, you went a step too far there. Going outside would be enough. So, one step at a time here.
It is a screamer, though. This blue. It is a screamer.
Blue Norther.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's So I've got some audio. We'll play from. If only I had some time. I wish I could go in and gather the most idiotic comments on national news over the weather change and play those. But I've got one clip we're going to play here.
That would be a full-time job to collect those, I think.
It really would.
This time of year.
And I just got a text from our producer. I've got you in for a first weather at the top. At the top.
Yeah. Cold wave coming.
Cold wave coming. It's the
millions
are in the path. Unprecedented polar vortex, bombogenesis.
I was going to say, how many times have you seen polar vortex in the news in the last few days?
I think we ought to give Ginger Z a shout out. She came in there and policed those people up. I mean, she came in there and whipped them into shape at ABC. She did great. I mean, I watched the 5 o'clock or the 5:30 World News Tonight on ABC, and for the first time in 5 days, my eye didn't start twitching. I mean, when she's there, it's okay. The problem is, like last week, she was doing that skydiving thing in Miami, and when she's not there, the rats they get out of hand. All right, let me invite our guest and let's see if we can make this ship fly here.
We can start our "What Really Grinds My Gears" segment tonight.
Yeah, no, we're just going to go on a. I think everybody needs to go on a rant.
Polar vortex, Mike.
Yeah.
The Euro has 6 inches of snow in 2.5 weeks.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mark your calendar.
We have that problem here locally now. So we've got a rogue TV station that's decided that maybe some consultant told them this, but they're starting to post 10 to 15 day snow forecasts.
Really?
Even John DeBlock got on their Facebook page and said something kind of ugly. John's the WCM here, but apparently it's not stopped them. It's just I think they do it to grind my gears, to get up under my skin.
Which station is that, James?
I'm not going to say. I'll let you figure it out.
Type it in the chat. Type it in the
Yeah,
chat.
exactly.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So our guest, his name has more than 7 syllables, and Bill, I don't even try.
And a whole lot more vowels too. Peter, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, guys?
Oh, perfect. Give us a good pronunciation so I don't butcher it,
God bless
Peter,
you.
when I announce you.
Yes, sir.
It's
We're up there now.
Domashtinsky.
I was talking to our engineer. I'm sorry. And I want to thank our engineering staff for changing my lights. We had one pop in here the other day. I went on the Oklahoma deal. Rick's friends out there in Oklahoma, the KOCO guys. One of my lights popped in here, and it scared me half to death. You ever had a TV light, like go out when you're on the air? It's horrifying. I mean, you get the smoke smell, and you see,
How about one pop? Have you ever had one pop?
Yeah, well, that's what this one did. It popped. I mean, it was horrifying. But I think we're all here because Nate is not going to be on tonight. He had a death in the family, so as soon as I see us go up on cable television, then we can start this.
Okay. So Peter, say your name one more time for us.
Peter is fine, but it really Piotr. And it's Piotr Domashtinsky.
Oh my goodness.
Peter, we have a PhD guy on here. We're going to make him say your name. Dr. John is going to be in charge of saying your name. All right. Oh, we're on cable. Hello. Welcome to our cable television viewers. We are shocking the world by starting on time tonight.
We're going to get out early tonight.
Yeah, I'll have to be. Again, they got me at the top of the newscast. In fact, we'll talk about that. Let's get the show started here. Okay. Often we give away our best material here on the pre-show. So
yeah, I've noticed.
Let me.
It's all downhill from here.
Let me get the recorders going here. Track 1, track 2, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains episode number 459 for the 10th of November 2014. We thank you for listening and or watching, whichever version happen to be taking in. This is the weekly show about weather. We have some big brains on here. We talk about a variety of subjects involving science and meteorology. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got some interesting weather changes happening across the nation as the coldest air of the season begins to drop in. Brian Peters is the internationally beloved meteorologist. And Brian, I have some exciting news.
You do? Go ahead.
And for those that don't know, Brian is a longtime government employee. He was a WCM, Warning Coordination Meteorologist. He retired. He now works for the bad guys on the television side. He works for me in television. So on our late news, no more green wall. How about that? I have been doing the weather for 30...
No more green wall. Wow.
Yeah, I've been this is 36 years on television, and we ditched the green wall for the late news effective last Thursday.
Going to use the big monitor?
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring in somebody every night. We've been doing this on our 4 o'clock in the afternoon newscast since it started because I just didn't want to do the green wall, and it has worked beautifully on that newscast, and we're going to phase it into the late newscast. In fact, we're not going to phase it in; we're going to do it. So I will be on the green wall if we have a tornado outbreak or something really serious. But on most nights, I will be in the weather office with somebody else. Many nights it'll be a news anchor. It might be a sports anchor one night if we got a big sporting event and weather's involved. Might be somebody off the streets. I might go get somebody from the Arby's over here. But the point is this. Everybody knows what the weather's going to do. Everybody, again, it is delusional if we think in our industry, and I'm talking those that work in television, that people are going to wait until the late news. If you're in the Eastern time zone, 11, Central, 10, to get the forecast, because they're going to get it on their phone all day. If they want to know the weather, they look at their phone, whether it's a crap app or maybe a good app with human-powered products. But they know the basics of what the weather's going to do. So the idea of doing a Brick Tamlin, Ron Burgundy, 1978 newscast, hey, sunny skies tomorrow for your Wednesday, I think that the time has passed us by for that. So we're going to come in and try and take it really deep. We're going to try and do some fun things, and we're going to try and teach and do some science and have a little fun. And it just depends on the situation. So, Brian, next time you're up here doing the 10 o'clock, the late news, no more green wall. So,
I think it's funny how you call the 10 o'clock the late news.
It is for Central Time.
Yeah. I know it's weird for you. It's the 11, but whatever. And we'll talk about that later. And the other thing, too, at some point, in fact, let's just do it real quick because, Peter, I don't want you to hang up on us. You hang tight, our guest. So we are coming into a situation here where we're getting cold air flooding much of the country. And let me just play some sound from the CBS Morning News. You guys seen that program before?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to roll some audio here, and you might hear the bell or a buzzer come out from time to time. And this is not very long, I promise. We'll get right into our guest introduction, but let's just roll this and we'll talk about it.
Tell us exactly what this is. Well, Superstorm Nori packs more energy than Hurricane Sandy. It's headed our way, and we are in the bullseye. This weekend, it's going to plow into Alaska, creating 50-foot waves. Then by midweek, all hell breaks loose. It's going to collide with the jet stream, pushing Arctic air all the way down, perhaps as low as Florida. Now, remember the polar vortex of last year? This is different. It's called bombogenesis. That's geek talk for when pressures suddenly drop, when you have hot air, cold air.
Now understand, this guy's got some truth sprinkled in here. It's not all right. There's a little sprinkling of truth, but you really got to pick it out.
Colliding like what we're going to see over Canada and the American Midwest, plunging temperatures perhaps 30 degrees below normal.
Wow. So what are the best and worst case scenarios?
Well, in the best case scenario, it simply means take out your rubber boots and mufflers and just hunker down. In a worst case scenario, it could mean a deep freeze. It means airlines canceling flights left and right. It means transportation being disrupted, train schedules being disrupted, people's schedules being thrown in kilter. So we're talking about a massive disruption which will peak.
A massive disruption, keep that in mind.
Around November 13th to November.
Now, November 13th, that's like we're doing this on the 10th, so this is, I guess the disruption is coming later here.
15th, but ripple through the rest of November.
Wow. How long are we thinking this is going to last? You said through the rest of the month and into December?
Well, it peaks mid-week next week, so expect several days of pretty miserable weather. But then ripples will probably be with us for the end of the month.
So does that mean that our winter's going to be horrific and we should just hide now?
Well, it means we're going to have another episode of the polar vortex. And, get used to it. The Earth is changing, and on average, we're going to see violent swings.
Bombogenesis. Did I say it right? Nicely done. Thank you.
Oh, brother. So this guy, I don't even know who he is. some people do know who he is.
Yeah, which meteorologist is that? Where did he get his?
Supposedly he's a physicist. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's not a meteorologist. He's a.
I think people on Twitter were saying he's a physicist.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
That's a good one to have.
Sure. There's not enough meteorologists out there to talk to.
No, exactly.
Go grab any scientist.
Very hard to find. So, you know, and of course, this is just, it goes round and around and around and around, and it's, you know, the Facebook guys just hit the share button, and, you know, who in the world checked off on this guy to come on the show and say this? I mean, that would be like me going and critiquing an opera in New York. You know, I could make up a bunch of stuff, but I don't know anything about it. I mean, this is worse than the Bill Nye the Science Guy soundbite we had a few years ago when he was talking about.
I thought that was him for a minute, James.
No. Was he wearing a bow tie?
Yeah.
No, we're going to stop there. We'll do the rants. We're going to save the rants for the end of the show. A lot of people know that we're cranky, and we're going to do some rants, but we're going to save it for the end, okay?
Well, grind my gears. It'll be on.
Brian, are you cranky tonight?
I'm cranky tonight.
Good.
Cold,
all right.
Cold air coming our ways. As a matter of fact, this could be the first show with Fropa in Norman, Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is exciting. Rick Smith is in Norman, and during the show tonight, Rick is actually going to have a frontal passage. I mean, we need to ring the bell or the buzzer or something, man. Just let us know when it comes through.
I'll yell out or sound a siren or something when it happens. It's about 25, 30 miles away, so we're on Fropa watch at this point.
You got to love a good Fropa. Yeah, I watched Denver today. You know, those guys were at like 69.
Oh, yeah.
Morning. They were almost at 70. And when I went on the air for the early evening newscast, they were at 18.
Yeah, they're 17 now.
Wow.
I mean, you can imagine somebody that had no idea this was going to happen. You know, they walk out, it's like 65, almost 70, and, you know, and they walk out of the office to go home, and it's like 19 or 18. That's tough. So.
Yeah, we were 78 here in Norman today, and Southwest Oklahoma got up to 88 down there was the hot spot for Southwest. So it's going to be quite a shock.
And their high tomorrow will be what?
A high tomorrow will be less than half of that, probably. Most of us won't get out of the 30s, so
yeah, you're going to see a
strong north wind.
Drop.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Wow.
My wife was mentioning earlier, can you imagine back when you didn't have forecasts like this? I mean, you just, it's a lovely day, and then all of a sudden it's like, I mean, it's really, yeah. I mean, of course, well, we'll rant about it later, but it's November in Oklahoma, so.
Yeah, we're going to save the rants for later. It does turn cold in November. Not that, you know, it's never happened before. It's unprecedented, but Rick is going to be the first one to experience the cold frontal passage, so we'll get an update from him. By the way, we got Bill Murray in some remote outpost, and I told Bill it looks like he's in some bookie headquarters. We got like a football staff behind. Bill, where are you, and what are you doing?
Yeah, James, this is actually my office right here in Birmingham, believe it or not. After about 8 weeks of being on the road the entire time, I'm home for a while. So anyway, this is all hotel junk behind me right here. But, James, I think we need to cancel the rest of the show because I had no idea this was going to be such a disruption this week.
Exactly.
And I need to go prepare. So anyway,
you dig a hole, according to that guy. And we'll let you bring in our guest in just a second. But the last two to experience the cold air, I guess Aubrey, you're going to get it before John. So Aubrey, I see you're hunkered down in edit booth 2.
I'm edit booth 2. I'm hunkered down. I'm ready for Wednesday's temperature drop.
And Aubrey is in Harrisonburg, Virginia. For those that don't know, that are new to the show. And so how low will you go later this week?
We're going to go 60 for a high on Wednesday and then 30 for a low. And then by Friday, we went a high of 40.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's cool. And John, you, I guess, will experience it last. The last one to get the cold. You'll catch it, what, Thursday?
Yeah, we're talking about perhaps some record low highs once we get to Thursday and Friday. You know, if we only get to about 40, 43, that's near record low high territory.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to escape this cold air. But Bill, bring in our guest. We'll do the rants at the end of the show.
Yeah, James. Tonight's guest weather brain is a postdoctoral research fellow at NASA's Global Precipitation Measurement Ground Validation Unit. He got his MS and BS in electrical engineering from the Warsaw University of Technology, his PhD in water resources engineering from the University of Iowa. Dr. Piotr Domaszynski, welcome to Weather Brains.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and I guess you're laughing along with us as we get ready for this cold wave. Makes me long for the days, James, when JB pined away for cold wave warnings. Do you remember those days, James Spann?
Yeah, but we need one. I mean, this is a cold wave. And I was going to say, Bill, anytime you line up a guest with more than 5 syllables in his name, you know the guy's brilliance. I mean, this might be the smartest guy that's ever been on the show, the most intelligent weather brain ever.
Yeah, he's broken the record for most vowels in a name tonight, James. So we're good to go with that. But anyway, Peter, since we're worrying about the weather here in the United States, talk about the weather in Poland for a minute. Do you miss the weather in Warsaw? Now that you're here in the United States.
Well, actually, when I first came to the U.S., I moved to Iowa, and the weather in Iowa happened to be pretty close to the Polish weather. So I can't say I missed it there. But from Iowa, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I miss Nashville more because now I spend about half of my time at Wallops Island, Virginia, and half of my time in Syracuse, New York. So right now I'm actually at my Syracuse, New York office. And right now, today we had a beautiful day, but we are gearing up for some cool down. And so, weather in Poland is not that much different than places like Syracuse or Iowa. So I can say I miss it.
Well, I mentioned a couple of degrees that came from Poland. So talk about, and you studied in the United States. Talk about the difference, compare and contrast the difference between studying in Poland and studying in the United States, Peter.
Well, that's a very loaded question.
That's a loaded questioner.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
thanks,
what we
John.
do on this show. We have loaded questions from loaded guys.
The loaded questioner. That's good.
I must say it was quite a shock for me to come and study here in the U.S. because the system is completely different as far as, especially at higher level. Here in the U.S., you can see how education is really the business model. Obtaining funding and pursuing certain research ideas is very active and is very transparent, at least for a student. When you don't have to worry about the money, you just know where it's coming from. In Poland, I know that there are some changes with the European Union now and the system of funding being more active, but during my time in Poland, you couldn't really see in academia a big connection between funding sources and research. It was more about studying and learning the basics rather than trying to understand why we're doing it. So I would say that the system there was kind of broken in that way. So learning the new ways was kind of a shock, and it took me quite some time to understand how everything works here. So, and I'm still learning.
Well, it seems like you're hitting at the gist of what a lot of people feel is a major flaw in the American higher education program. So, comment on that a little further, Peter, and because I think you were getting at that. Because it seems like maybe college in the United States to a great degree has become big business, and with falling graduation rates and things like that. I don't want to turn this into college brains tonight, but since we asked the question, maybe the panel has some comments on that too. What are your thoughts on the status of higher education in the United States today?
I think it wouldn't hurt for some decision makers to take a big step back and maybe reanalyze the model, because I don't think it's a good model right now. Maybe it worked just fine 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it kind of grew into something that I don't think too many people have any control over, and I don't think it serves the purpose that was intended to serve right now. but I don't want to get into the politics of it. You know, I can just say that comparing to my experience from Poland, this was a step in good direction as far as how the research gets motivated by money. But right now, I think that, you know, maybe someone else on the panel can add a word or two.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
I'm sorry, Peter. Rick, lay it on us, man.
That's
based on what I'm seeing on the mesonet and the wind I'm hearing outside, the front has passed through beautiful northwest Norman, Oklahoma.
We had to interrupt the interview for this breaking news, Peter. I'm sorry. We have Fropa in northwest Norman.
Very unusual for November in Oklahoma, so I wanted everybody to be aware of that. So.
Record break.
We now resume normal programming.
Millions are in the path. That is
and millions are in the path. I love that.
It's a monster storm, the polar vortex in Norman, Oklahoma. So.
I think every cold front, we should say millions are in the path.
Yeah.
Millions are in the path of this next cold front.
Millions are in the path of all weather.
I'll go one step. Let's say tens of millions are in the path.
Oh, sure. Let's cry. I'm sorry, Bill Murray, but we now return to our regularly scheduled interview.
Well, I think for doing that, James, you should have to run around outside without your shirt on when the Fropa happens in Birmingham. So that'll be for the 4 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news tomorrow night. So we'll be looking forward to that. So back to the question real quick, and before we get back to weather, I want to ask one more question about higher education and relate it back to Poland. You know, student loan debt in the United States has now reached $1 trillion. Peter, how hard is it to get into college and to pay for it when you're a student in Poland and in the European Union?
Well, so it's free. You know, it's free to go to school to get higher education in Poland. Technically, it's free. Practically, it's not, because you always have some expenses. You know, you need a place to stay. You probably need some money to get yourself some food and other things, but now
10 minutes to show.
Sorry.
Stand by.
That's true for most of public education, but of course there's a variety of private institutions that make this for-profit business, and they're very popular right now. But I was lucky enough to go through my MS education without having to pay for it. So was that good? For me, it was good. But is this a good model? I'm not an expert in that, so I can't tell you. Of course, you know, I'd rather not have a major debt, but you know, I'm not in a position to discuss whether this is good or bad for the system.
So Peter, along that line, what are the good meteorology schools in Europe? Where do you go if you're deciding that you want to follow meteorology as a pursuit?
By the way, Bill, your audio has gone wacko.
You're toast.
Sorry. Yeah,
I thought I was the only one that heard it.
No,
sounds great on my end. I don't know what your problem is over there, guys. I have no idea. But is it better now?
The impacts of the frontal passage.
It probably was.
the frontal passage is taking Bill's audio out. So
He sounds like he's broadcasting from Jupiter.
It's the S waves and the G waves or something like that. So. Any better, James?
You're broadcasting from a urinal in the airport at Budapest. Or something.
All right, somebody take it away, Ben.
Yeah, Peter, let me jump in here. It strikes me quite personal, because I have one son who's out of college now, gainfully employed. I have a daughter in college, and I have a couple more kids coming down the pike. And the cost of education to me is just staggering. And they are getting a good education, but they're being saddled with this debt that can, unless you've got some parents with some income, they're going to have that for a while, and it's going to delay their ability to get into the marketplace and actually be productive. You know, and I think that's so different from what Poland is providing.
See, you know, that hasn't been my experience. So I can only feel sorry for people who have to accumulate all this debt before they can start paying it back, and not only that, with the current model, the moment you leave your educational institution, your chances of securing a well-paid job are not as good as they were, say 10, 15 years ago. So that adds to the picture. It's not only the debt, it's also the chances you have after graduating. So again, it's difficult for me to even understand, the situation, because I'm not in that situation. But I can hear it from my friends, and I can hear it from my coworkers. Some of them are 10, 15 years out of college and they're still paying their loans.
Right.
Right. As long as it's worth it, like for example, I have a friend who's a nurse, and she got her education, she's paying her loans, but her job is good enough and pays well enough that for her it's not a big deal, But I have friends who have all this debt and can't find a job, and that's a big problem. And I think that something's going to happen, something's going to change. It's been only the last 10 maybe years when the cost of education skyrocketed. So it's
hey, let's check Bill's audio. Bill, you're back.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You're good.
Okay, good. Just had to drop out of that hangout. So sorry about that, Peter. Keep going.
No, that's actually all I want to say about that. It's I don't want to favor capitalism over communism here, or the other way around, but it's definitely somewhat of a monster that grew out of proportions right now. The model with the way it's financed and what it is for the students, and I think that it's a topic for a big discussion.
Well, it's a very real issue and something that we're grappling with in this country. So it'll be interesting to see how the old the MOOCs, take over, and do they really have an impact, and are they really effective, that sort of stuff. But moving on to weather, and that's why we've got you here tonight. It's interesting to hear a European take on other issues. But talk about your research with NASA for a few minutes, Peter.
Sure. So just about over 2 years ago, I joined that NASA group called GPM Ground Validation. GPM stands for Global Precipitation Measurement Mission, and which is a new satellite that launched in February of this year. And so my group is responsible for providing physical evidence or to do like a sanity check for the satellite. So the satellite is up, it's collecting data, and we are on the ground doing everything we can to provide some physical evidence for both the scientific community and the algorithm developers to test whether the satellite is performing as it should, basically. So specifically, the group that I'm in, we work in this kind of a dual mode. So we deploy instrumentation in two fashions. One is a field campaign mode, and the other one is a long-term observatory. So in Virginia at Wallops, we have what we call a long-term precipitation facility where we deploy instruments, and over time we collect data. And the second mode, which is a field campaign mode, is where we go for about 6 weeks to different locations in the US, and we deploy a variety of instrumentation, all designed to observe precipitation in some form of fashion, and we collect those very unique data sets that I don't think too many institutions would be able to collect, because of course it requires tremendous amount of money to do. So I can't see how an institution like a university or someone, maybe like even a larger group could do that, because we're talking not only ground in-situ instrumentations like rain gauges or disdrometers, but also radars and aircrafts, and everything is coordinated with satellite overpass. So yeah.
So Peter, which satellites are you primarily interested in studying? All of them, or just a few specific ones, or how does that work?
GPM is it's a new satellite, but it replaces a previous satellite called TRIM. So the TRIM was the tropical rainfall measurement mission, and that ran out of fuel just recently. So it can no longer provide valuable data. So GPM is an upgrade. It's a new international satellite. It's a collaboration between NASA and JAXA, the Japanese space agency, and the difference is that some of the instrumentation has been upgraded, like the dual frequency precipitation radar, but also the satellite will have greater coverage. So TRIM was a tropical mission, so focused on the tropical belt, really, and covered only maybe half of the U.S. as far as latitude goes. But the GPM will reach all the way to the areas where we observe snowfall, and that's a real big game changer for us. So with TRIM, we were focusing on rainfall detection, rainfall estimation, and GPM will try to do the same for rain, plus hopefully some particle distribution information. But we will also be able to see snow, and we hope to start detecting and quantifying snow from satellite platform. So GPM is the satellite.
So what are some of the early results from what you've seen, Peter?
Early results, for now, as far as the satellite goes, all we can see is that it's performing well, and it's delivering us. The data is available, actually. Everybody can go and download data, but I think it's a little too early to report on any specific studies comparing. It's the game we play is that we feed information to algorithm developers. So it's a brand new satellite, and as the data starts flowing in, they have a chance to test their algorithms, and they have to be able to test those algorithms against something. So we've been having those field campaigns, about one campaign every year for the past couple years, and they targeted certain specific areas. So, for example, we had a campaign in Oklahoma in 2009 where we focused on some of the more convective systems, and then there was a campaign in Canada where we looked at some of the lake effect snow. We just finished a campaign in the Appalachian Mountains, the IFEX campaign, where we looked at some of the orographic and some of the specific things that happen in the Smoky Mountains, for example, and the Appalachian. So we're collecting those different samples, and we feed them to the algorithm developers, and they start adjusting the algorithms a little better. So there is no clear-cut answer as of yet. How are we doing as far as the GPM goes, but it will take some time, because you have to think about it this way. If you set up a ground validation station or an experiment, first condition, it needs to rain for you to collect the data set. And the second condition is that you need to have a satellite overpass. And when you think about it, sometimes being deployed for about 6 weeks or even a couple months, you may get only a couple data points to your analysis, where you have both the ground instrument observations and the satellite overpass, and it rained. So we need some more time for some wow results, I'd say.
So Peter, there recently was an article in the New York Times, decrying all the problems in terms of funding, in terms of technology, especially satellites. What's your take on that right now from the American weather scene, and then internationally, how we stack up in terms of our satellite technology meteorologically against the rest of the world?
It's I think that I'm not in a position to talk about finances, but I haven't seen any dramatic change as far as at least this project, and it seemed like that, of course, when the space shuttle program went away, it created kind of a some, I guess, funding hanging in the air that was distributed among the NASA, and some of this money that definitely was left for the Earth sciences. So I think that as of now, at least from the NASA perspective and weather, we're doing fine. But again, I'm not in a position to talk about more global or even national view. But my impression has been that I've been hearing, for example, that there's discussion about how many petaflops of that our models can do versus European models can do, and how the latest Sandy, or how the European model was the only one that was able to capture the hook, and how it relates to how much computing power we have on our disposal and things like that. So I know there is this discussion, but from my perspective, my paychecks have been coming every month, and I've been happy about that.
Yeah, Peter, I wanted to ask you about comparison of GPM to TRMM. When I was at NASA Goddard, that's where I began my career. I worked with Joanne Simpson, who was one of the chief designers behind TRMM. And one of the big questions was, at that time, what wavelength should they use for the radar that was on the TRMM satellite?
Yes.
What kind of discussions went through with the GPM?
So GPM, the specifics of the radar. So maybe just a little bit, technical here, but so the GPM mission is really a constellation. So its spatial and temporal resolution relies on a constellation of satellites. So we're not just talking about one satellite, but a number of satellites that will be contributing and creating this global picture. And that picture, once the constellation is in place, will provide us with precipitation information on global scale with about 3-hour update time, which is great. But the core satellite, which launched in February, is up there. Not the whole constellation, not yet. But the core has two main instruments. One is a GMI, which is a GPM microwave imager, and it's not a radar. It's a microwave imager, so it uses about, there are 13 different frequencies. But the precipitation instrument is the radar, and the radar has two frequencies on it, so it's a dual frequency radar. And it's KA-KU, which is 13 and 35 gigahertz. And so the selection of those two frequencies has everything to do with precipitation.
Oh, sure.
And so basically the difference in reflectivity between those two frequencies when looking down corresponds to attenuation, to signal attenuation. So or vice versa. If we see how those two frequencies stay diverging, we can interpret this as the amount of reflectivity or the sizes of the dominant sizes of particles within a volume. So that's a big change from the previous single frequency radar.
Do any of these satellites carry a lightning detector on them?
Oh, I don't think the GPM does carry it.
Isn't there a plan for one at some point?
I've heard about plans, but I can't talk about it. I know that radar you can choose from in general to detect lightning, but I'm not aware if there is an algorithm in place right now that you could use GPM to do that. So no.
Okay.
Would be my answer.
Bill?
So Peter, you're there in Wallops Island. Of course, a lot of folks around the country followed, with great sadness, the loss of the rocket last week. Any commentary there? Did you get to see the launch? And do we know anything more this week than we knew last week about what happened?
So my first comment is not my fault. I was actually in Syracuse that week, and I missed the launch, but when I came back to my office at Wallops, everybody was sharing their videos and the pictures, and some of them were quite dramatic. And I think that, especially from some of those videos taken with like an iPhone, you could see people standing a good distance from the pad, and after everything exploded, the wave came in, and you can, my friends were telling me how it pretty much twisted them like 90 degrees.
Wow.
All their phones in one hand, being so far away, and you can hear it and you can see it. So that was very dramatic. And general comments I've been hearing from the people that work on base and are somewhat involved in the project is they keep repeating, it's part of the game, it's part of the business, that's how we learn, that's how we move forward. And as long as we can learn from this unfortunate event, then we should focus on learning as much as we can, not to repeat whatever mistakes happen. And I don't think we know a whole lot. I think that there are some fingers pointing towards the engines as the main culprit, but I think we should wait for the official investigation to complete.
Well, sort of back to the weather department for a second. Any more field projects coming up in the near future that you can share with us, Peter?
Yes, actually, we are putting together another field campaign, and that one will be taking place in the Washington State Olympic Peninsula, and it will happen in November of 2015 and all the way to 2016 January. So as you may imagine, we are expecting to see all kinds of precipitation in both liquid and solid form, and so we are preparing ground instrumentations and our deployable radars that we will be taking to Washington State sometime. We actually have started deploying already because of how difficult it is to get to some places once we have snow on the ground. So we're rushing to get some instruments there now so we can start our early, because every campaign has this very intensive observation period when everybody is there and all the aircrafts and all the radars and all the people, but we usually spend some time where we deploy some of those low-cost instruments like rain gauges before the campaign, maybe a couple months, to kind of get a feel how everything's been performing, and then everybody kicks in. And the interesting thing is that we will also have that NASA unmanned vehicle also flying with us during that campaign. So we'll have the drone, the same drone that is part of the HS3 campaign that flies over hurricanes every season, has been flying for the past 3 seasons, I think. So it will join us. So it's going to be exciting, and we're looking forward to it.
So now, Peter, James has a question. He wants to know, since you've been to all these places all over the country and have a lot left to go, what's been your favorite barbecue joint you've run into yet?
Exactly. Now we're getting to the meat of the show here. Exactly.
Oh, you can easily make a lot of friends and a lot of enemies with a question like that.
Very diplomatic.
Well, Nate's not here, so that covers, North Carolina. We're all right there, but.
I usually join every campaign for about 2-3 weeks in the middle, so I'm in a good position where by the time I get there, some of my colleagues have already been at location long enough, so they just take me to all the good places. We never spend any time at the bad places. I have it all figured out by the time I get there. But definitely, Oklahoma had some pretty good barbecue places.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure Rick can comment on those, and I want Rick and Aubrey to have a chance to ask a question here in a second. So I'll ask one more before James can wrap us up. But what's next for your career, Peter?
That's a big question actually. And
after coming on this show, his career might be over. We've ended a lot of careers by guests coming on this show. Yeah.
No, that's one of those questions I've been struggling myself with for quite some time, and I am in this what they call a dual career situation where my spouse also has a PhD, and her field is communication sciences and disorders. So we've been kind of following each other for the past X number of years. I've moved quite a few times over the last couple of years, and so definite. I'm how to say it, I'm accepting or I'm entertaining different opportunities. Definitely academia is one of them, so I'm looking at different positions in academia here in Syracuse area as well as other locations, and I continue my collaboration with I hope to continue my collaboration with NASA and my group, because one thing that maybe I forgot to mention is that all those campaigns that we've put together with our continuous deployment and continuous data collection at Wallops, they have generated some tremendous data sets and some wonderful data sets, some unique data sets that need to be analyzed. And so, you can only imagine that from a 6-week campaign somewhere in Canada, you can bring home terabytes of data from a number of instruments. So to analyze that, it's time, we need resources. So it's kind of like a paradox of that, is that we spend all this time collecting data, not enough time to analyze it, to really, start the feedback flowing, really, and the juices and answers to our questions. So maybe, this is my time to kind of step back from the actively data collection and pursuing, that, and focusing more on what is that we found, 2009 in Oklahoma or 2011 in Iowa or somewhere else, places like that. So yes, that's my plan.
Well, I have a question. What, I was kind of perusing through the GPM website earlier today. What do you think is the most beneficial graphics for us and the broadcasting community to look at? Is it more important for us to look at what the GPM is doing on kind of a global level, or what do you think is the most beneficial for us to use on with the GPM? Do we wait for the research to come out?
I will share with you that I think as soon as December 1st, NASA will be releasing a new product called iMerge. And iMerge, just like the name may suggest, will be merging a number of satellite products that are becoming available. And so there will be some data processing involved when we'll be trying to bring as much as we can into the picture to create as complete of a product as we can. And I think that at that stage, you will start seeing some added value for the community.
Okay.
But I know that a lot of people who have specific focus, like for example hurricanes, they see a lot of added value from looking at those towers, as they call those high columns in the hurricane, and trying to predict what's going to happen, how severe things are going to get. So there's definitely, just because the coverage is better and the resolution is better, I think eventually products will become better. But we are in the stage where we are formulating those products. So again, just wait a little bit and start checking the iMerge.
Okay, iMerge.
So Peter, here's my question. Do you think all of us can get one of those hats like you got on?
Sure.
There you go. You heard it. We're all getting new NASA hats. Well, Peter, thank you. If you got a few minutes to stay with us for the end of the show, do you have to go now?
I can stay, I think.
Good. All right, awesome. And let me warn you, we're going to be asking for a pick of the week in a little bit where you come up with something weather-related, so we'll do that toward the end of the show. But at this point, we're going to take a break for Professor Peters, and we'll have the astronomy report from Tony Rice. And let me say also, I don't know if I said this up front, but Nate Johnson is not with us this week. He had a death in the family, and we all know that he's certainly in our thoughts and prayers. And also Kevin Selly is in his, third week, I think, is the new chief meteorologist at his television station in Wichita Falls, and he's trying to stay away from the show so he won't be fired for the first 3 weeks of his career there. So we hope he'll be back next week. But right now, let's take a break for Professor Peters and Tony Rice. We'll come back with the email inbox, picks of the week, National Weather Roundup, and a bunch of wild rants. So stay with us as WeatherBrains continues.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
There's been a lot of discussion both in this podcast and elsewhere in the weather community about the pros and cons of naming of winter storms. With the naming of storms on my mind, I saw a tweet last week that mentioned the full beaver moon. In my 4+ decades of weather, I did not recall hearing that term. So off I go into the research mode, thinking about another term for WeatherBrains 101, and lo and behold, I find out that Native Americans gave names to the moons. Early Native Americans did not keep track of time in a conventional fashion using the months of the calendar, but many tribes did keep track of time by observing the seasons and lunar months. For some tribes, the year was composed of 4 seasons, while for others the year was divided into 5 parts. To make the task easier, tribes would name the full moons using their own naming preferences, but as you might guess, there was a great deal of variability among the tribes. The common theme for most names was that the name itself would be descriptive of a certain event or activity that occurred during that particular time. Colonial Americans adopted some of the Native American moon names and applied them to the calendar system that is in use today. In the tweet I saw, the full beaver moon applies to the full moon of November. It got its name primarily from the Algonquin Indians, who gave it this name because this was the time to set beaver traps before the swamps became frozen. It was interesting to note that another fairly common name for the November full moon was the frost moon, taking its name from the occurrence of the first frosts. Some other Native American names for full moons can also find their origin with weather events. The February moon is often referred to as the full snow moon because many heavy snows occurred around this time. The December full moon is referred to as full cold moon, since this is the month when the weather turns cold and the nights become long. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, I'm Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook for the week of November 10th. This week, look to the southwest for Mars near the horizon. It'll be just above the handle of the teapot-shaped asterism that makes up the central part of the constellation Sagittarius. Throughout the night, the great square in the constellation Pegasus will be visible in the southeast. The 4 nearly equal bright stars make up the body of the winged horse. This week marks the beginning of the Leonid meteor shower. We may see an increase in meteors as the week progresses. Though previous years have produced dozens of meteors per hour, last year's shower was spoiled by the full moon, so it's harder to predict what we might see this year. Though major activity isn't expected, there have been some reports of visible meteors from skies already. It's worth a look this weekend and early next week, with the moon not rising until after midnight. It's also worth pointing out that the Leonid meteors probably don't have anything to do with the increase in fireballs over the mid-Atlantic and southeast last week. Meteor showers like the Leonids are caused by small particles left behind by comets, while bright fireballs, like those seen over West Virginia, Alabama, and Texas last week, are larger space rocks. If you do see a meteor, visit the AMS website. No, not that AMS. The American Meteor Society at amsmeteors.org. You can enter a report which will help triangulate the path and maybe even help meteorite hunters find anything that survived the fall. That's your Astronomy Outlook. I'm NASA Ambassador Tony Rice. You can follow me on Twitter at RTPHokey for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
It is November 10th, 2014. This is the National Weather Roundup, and we all know what the big story is. Faux in Norman, Oklahoma. Rick, how low have you gone since the faux
James, this will be an update. Let's see. We are 51 degrees currently at the Norman Mesonet site. Winds gusting now to, hold on. We've been gusting to 22 miles an hour. We had a 66-mile-an-hour gust down at Altus, Oklahoma, a little while ago. So it's a little rough. It's a monster storm.
Yes, I was about to say.
The cold is plunging.
Yeah. So here's the deal. We know now that this is a monster storm. And there's some just great stuff. I pulled this right off the news. And Ginger Z was not there, okay, when they pulled this stunt. This was like sometime late last week. She was like about to skydive, and she was not in the studio. When Ginger Z is there, she gets them straight. When she's not there, the rats just go nuts. But there's a graphic out there that's awesome. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Mike Rollins made this graphic, and I thought this was fantastic. Have you guys seen this one?
Yes.
Hang on here.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, there we go. So here we go. We've got he made this graphic. This covers anytime we have any minor storm or cold weather, whatever. Unprecedented, surprise, monster storm affecting millions, massive, deadly, historic, polar vortex, climate change, extreme, cold bomb struck without warning. I like that because that gets in most of the meme stuff that they use. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the event is. You're going to hear this stuff. And every year it deteriorates to the point where it's total tabloid stuff on television. And it is so stinking frustrating for me because we have to come in here with some type of sensible, wording to offset this. And here's the biggest issue I have. I spent one day last week 2 hours having to put this stuff down. I don't have 2 hours. I could be doing something very constructive with my time, looking at weather data, trying to make a more accurate forecast, responding to legitimate questions coming in from social media. But no, I deal with 2 hours from people. I heard that we're going to have a bomb go off next week, and we're going to have all of our travel is going to be disrupted, and the airports are going to be shut down. And so I don't have time for that. And here's the other problem now. It seems like, and this is a problem we've talked about here before, but some local people play the game of posting voodoo snowstorms 10 to 15 days away in the medium range, coming off a deterministic run of some model. A global model, whether European, American, whatever. And I think that's a dangerous game to play. So in addition to having to put down this, stuff from the networks, then you got to put down this stuff. I heard on Facebook there's a snowstorm coming in 10 days or 12 days. What? Come on. After what happened here January of last year, or this year, we had this horrible snow situation where 50,000 people were stranded in vehicles. It was a humanitarian crisis. 5 people were killed. We didn't forecast it well. And to start throwing out stuff like that 10, 15 days in advance, I think is very dangerous, and it's just not wise. It doesn't do any good for anybody. So we've got to find some type of logic. And I've given up on this ever-changing. I know I'm fighting a losing battle. Next year will probably be worse. You watch ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, all these networks. The truth has nothing to do with what they say. But the question for everybody here, what do we do? I mean, we can't stop it. Do we just sit back and try and fight it? Do we just let it go and not say anything? How should we respond to this hyperbole on a national level?
Well, James, I think Bill is an example of how we're approaching it right now. At least the National Weather Association is addressing this issue by providing a new seal, and this is a digital seal. Bill is the first one to receive that seal, and this lends credibility to any information he puts on the internet. To me, that's the first approach.
So right now, I'm the only person on the internet that you can safely follow. So there you go.
Well, we all remember this graphic from last year that the NWS in New York had to put out, and I showed this in I've been teaching a class on Mondays the last 5 weeks for older adults, and we talked about this, and then I kind of put out my own public service announcement on my Facebook page, but it's using this as an outlet. And I think granted eventually, but there are people who I think will realize that, hey, this big massive snowstorm, that was supposed to hit in a week and a half never happened. And I think as we continue to talk about this, to talk about the hype, that there is so much hype out there, the only responsible people will realize it. There obviously will be some who will continue to still fall for the professionally made graphics on Facebook. But I think we are doing the right thing by talking about it, by addressing the issue. It's sad that we have to waste our time doing this. But I think, James, as you say, educating the public.
And I would agree with Aubrey. I think we just have to keep providing high quality, dependable information that's without the hype and without all the hoopla and everything and monster storms and all the scary adjectives, and just give the good information. And one of the things we have to do, it affects our job, and Brian can probably attest to this too. We have emergency managers and public safety officials and people that we work with. They're watching ABC Nightly News and they see this, and so that gets them concerned, and then they're asking us questions, and we have to do the same thing you do, rumor control, and no, don't worry about that. We're not forecasting a foot of snow next weekend or anything like that. So we have to squelch those rumors too. And another thing we do, every chance I get, every talk I do, every conference call we do with emergency managers, is just really try to enlist them into our army of, stop spreading this stuff. Just find a reliable source, a reliable local source, and stick with it, and just say no to spreading this garbage out there. I think it's just going to be a grassroots thing, and I think we're doing the right thing. It's just frustrating, and it's going to be person by person, probably painfully slow.
Well, I think educating people and saying, okay, well, at what point do real meteorologists who are really putting together a legitimate forecast, when do we start looking at snow amounts? Right. About 72 hours out ahead of a storm, maybe we'll glance at them, we'll start coming up with estimates a little further, and kind of letting them know that, snow totals really get hammered down, maybe 12 to 24, 36 hours ahead of a storm. That's not a lot of time ahead of a storm, but that at least lets them know that, no, we don't start looking at totals 8 days in advance of an approaching system.
Exactly.
Well, it's very frustrating, and for a guy, and everybody on this show, we don't have time to do this, and that's the biggest problem. It's taking away from time we could be using to prepare better forecasts to put down this stuff, and it's very frustrating, and I just don't see it going away. But I think all we can do is take a big deep breath and keep on keeping on, trying to just calm everybody down. And here's the thing, I'm telling you, one day, guess what we're going to have? We are going to have a monster storm one day. It might be in 5 years, it might be in 10 years, but after watching these boneheads on network news every night call every little, shortwave a monster storm, nobody's going to listen. Nobody will hear anything we say, because everything is a monster storm, and there are millions in the path, and it's unprecedented, and it's never happened again, and the Earth is changing, and whatever that physicist guy was saying, and they're not going to listen to us. And so, but I do think that the one thing that will help more than anything else is to do an awareness campaign. Please think before you share on Facebook.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff, I'm away from the media stuff we've talked about. I heard on Facebook it's going to snow, a foot next week, and it is clickbait. People get paid by the click, and they put up these outrageous forecasts. It doesn't matter if it's true; they just want clicks, and they get Google AdSense money. But people, they will hit that share button over and over and over and over, and it goes viral. And again, in my market, part of the problem is me. We had a forecast bust with a high-impact snow event, and they're not going to trust Brian Peters or James Spann. These buffoons, missed it, and so they're going to go for the most outrageous thing they can find and believe that's the truth, and that's what's going to happen next time. So we're fighting this horrific battle, and it's just so stinking frustrating. But I'd like to think as professionals within the weather enterprise, we can come to an agreement. We're not going to show computer models of snow totals 15 days in advance.
Yes.
And James, one thing that I see people doing, and to me this is just as bad. If you show a computer model snow graphic 10 days in advance, 15 days, whatever, even if you say this is garbage, or I don't think this is really going to happen, but look what the GFS is spitting out for 10 days from now. To me, that's still bad, even if you, because people aren't going to read that. They're going to get a snazzy-looking graphic that goes, "Holy cow, there's 15 inches of snow over us 2 weeks from now." You know what I mean?
They don't get people. They don't
get the context.
They don't get it exactly. They see it, and that's what they harp on, and they don't understand. The things that we see every day. We always see a big storm 8 to 12 days out on the GFS, or something like that. So, and it's bad context, and I saw it from three different meteorologists, at least two, one to the east and one to the west of me, a couple hours, and I was just floored at the irresponsibility that these people would post something like that 15 days out.
Call them boneheads. Go ahead. Call them boneheads.
This is unacceptable. Do you hear this? This is unacceptable.
Boy, she got
what
her
really
finger
grinds my
going and
gears.
Now we're getting wound up. Let's go.
And I agree. And look, even like tonight, I'm going to go on television here at the top of this newscast in 30 minutes and tell people it's going to get cold. Most people don't even listen to what we say. They're just going to assume it means tomorrow. And for where we are, the cold is not coming in tomorrow. It's the next day. It's like in 48 hours. And people are going to say, well, you were wrong. You said it's going to turn cold. They don't hear things very well anyway because people are busy. And I understand. You get the TV on. You're kind of halfway listening. But I agree. You thought a computer model say, well, this is just a computer model. It might be dead wrong, but people don't necessarily see that. They just look at those pretty colors. They're like drawn in. It's like, ooh.
Well, I think I said that this week.
Then retweet.
I said, why can't we just say it's going to be cold or it's going to be really cold? People get that.
Yep. I agree. All right, we got to move on here. See, the weather roundup turned into our rant segment.
One night we just need to have a rant show. Just listen to us whine for 2 hours.
See, and this is to get it out of our system.
Therapeutic purging of.
I don't need to be doing this on social media because it just people get sick. Yeah, that guy's just whining, and come on. I don't need to be doing it over there. So this is our outlet to share our emotions. So that's why we love doing this program. But speaking of this program, we also love hearing from you. And I would imagine the email inbox is totally overflowing this week.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
Okay, so yes, let's talk about some email, and I will flip to the ones where I can go. Okay, so was the email read last week?
No,
okay.
we did a zero email segment waiting on you.
I'm sorry, I missed. Okay, so this one came in from Rob Malinowski. I'm Polish. I'm an Urbanowitz, and I get confused with the Owskis, so I hope I said that right. Georgetown, Kentucky. Thought I would share this weather-related news story that was topping the news in Lexington. Basically, a weather radio that beeps when the battery is low, and a quick-thinking couple played with that sound to make intruders leave their home. And actually, no one was hurt, so it was actually very interesting. Also, what is the status of the Weather Alert Extreme Weather Seminar, normally in November?
I can address that. That's talking about a thing we do in our market. We had to move it to spring. We do it in association with a large auto show. The auto show moved to spring, and we move with it. So our annual training will be at some point in the spring. And we've had people come from all over for this. Brian does a great job, and that's kind of his baby. And Brian, do you know the dates by any chance?
No, I don't. As a matter of fact,
I don't either. All right. So as soon as we find out, we'll pass it on, though. But the bottom line is, Aubrey, it's been moved to spring.
Spring. Okay. This one came in from Carl Schneider. Guest suggestion: Levi Cowan from Tropical Tidbits and Brad Travis from WAFF 48 in Huntsville. And he also wants to pose the question: okay, should articles hinting at the possibility of a winter storm 3 weeks out actually gain reasonable backup actually contains reasonable backup, and he posts a link, and I looked at the link, and he's talking about Euro ensembles and things like that, and I'll tell you my opinion on that site is I don't think he should be doing that, because now if it's a site that is known to broadcasters or those in the weather community, I think it's fine, but those sites are accessible to the general public, and the general public still does not, your average user doesn't care what the Euro ensemble says in 15 days. They don't get that. They want to know if it's going to snow in 15 days or not. That's my thought. I don't know. What do you think, James?
Well, my position is pattern recognition is one thing, forecasting is another thing. And pattern recognition is a very viable way of looking at what you might expect in 10 or 15 or 20 days, but using pattern recognition, you can't tell somebody when or where it's going to snow and how much it's going to snow. You can't do that. It's just not. There are some things in this science we can do. There are some things in this science we cannot do, and that's one of the things we just cannot do. And the next question we get into, what about seasonal outlooks, and we'll talk about that later. But
all right. So why is the winter season the most weather hype? He says because there's no winter storm prediction center to serve as an example like the SPC does, and then also it is undeniable that in this age of information, all one needs is a computer and internet access to become a decent weather forecaster. First of all, I think that statement's false. The college curriculum currently for meteorology, from what I have heard from current students, does not do a good job at all teaching forecasting. Do you think a lot of these universities do teach the correct skills? Thoughts, panel?
Dr. John, what say you?
Yes and no. I do know that is a problem, and when I was teaching, I put a great emphasis on taking the theory and applying it to real-time forecasting. But I don't think that's universal, and I think there is some credibility to that statement.
I think, for me, the best forecasting I learned was internship, the on-the-job training. There's only so much you can learn in a classroom unless you're forecasting and going over it at some point every single day.
I used to begin my forecast class. Every student took an opportunity, alternated through the class. You spend the first 10 minutes of the class, you begin with water vapor, you tell me what's going on in the atmosphere. You can't forecast unless you can diagnose the current situation.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I mentioned in my class today.
Excellent.
We looked at the current conditions. All right, next email. Hello, WeatherBrains. Local story in the area. Basically, this little town starts and ends their Halloween celebrations by sounding the sirens, which are for first responders. This has been going on for quite a few years, but apparently suddenly this year, people thought there was a tornado when it was nearly 30 degrees and snowing lightly. So now, just like a lot of the PC issues, someone doesn't like it or someone complains and we have to fix it. So have we become so uneducated about the weather that the Facebook army revs up their Dell computers and calls for the banning of a long-standing tradition? Kind of interesting that all of a sudden this has been going on for years and years and years, and then suddenly people think that there's a tornado coming. And then lastly, I'm sure most of you, this is from our friend Tarmo in Estonia, I'm sure most of you have been following the Twitter traffic from the AMS Severe Local Storms Conference last week. One presentation from there completely stood out, and that was Lee Orf's 3B.3 at the Severe Local Storms Conference. He says for him it was the meteorological equivalent of the famous 1968 Mother of All Demons. And the presentation is on YouTube, so he did send a link, and I'll have to look at that later. And that is from our good friend Tarmo. So if you have an email, a link, maybe a guest suggestion, a book suggestion, anything that you would like to send us, you can do so by emailing us at email@weatherbrains.com. You can check us out on Facebook if you dare to go on Facebook, which you might not want to during the winter months. You can search WeatherBrains. If you go on the Twitter, you can search @WeatherBrains. And you can just go to the regular old www and search WeatherBrains. And yeah, I'd love to get those emails and those questions in. I like looking at the links, the fun links.
I think Tarmo needs to send some audio to us.
Tarmo.
I love it when he sends the audio. I love his accent. All right, so Nate is out again this week, so there's no Nate's news segment. So let's kind of do our roll into picks of the week here. And again, that we don't have a fog bank. Sky Daver just sent an email. He plans on being back next week. But this is where we go around the horn, and everybody shares something that is weather-related. All right, so Peter, I hope you're ready over there. We're going to give you about 2 more minutes, and we're going to come to you for your pick of the week. Let's just see. My pick involves this. Let's see if anybody recognizes this song.
Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon Lightfoot, yes!
The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yes, a lot of people, they're just like Aubrey. She's too young. She's never heard of this song before. Listen.
Great song. Great song.
From the Chippewa on down at the big lake they call Gitchagumi.
So this incident happened on this date, the date we're doing the program, November 10th in 1975. 75. And my pick of the week, it is a site that involves the meteorology behind the storm. It is from the guys up at, I believe, the University of Wisconsin, but it shows some surface maps, some upper air maps, but the Edmund Fitzgerald was, I believe the death toll was 29. The bell rang 29 times for the death of each one on the ship, and that is an amazing piece of music by Gordon Lightfoot. The song was released in 1976, the following year, about the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but it's about the gales of November coming early, and it was an iron ore ship, had 26,000 tons, and it never made it. It's a very sad story, but it's weather related. So the fact that this is the anniversary of that, it's the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. All right, Aubrey, I see you got something on your screen. What's your pick?
This is something from Twitter from today. It's a really cool image. If you're just listening to this, and we were talking about Colorado going from 68 to 18, and it's like a time-lapse 4-panel image of the same shot, and it shows the beautiful skies, and then the clouds coming in, and then the light snow, and then now there's like a coating of snow on the ground. Very good depiction of today's weather to the west.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. All right, let's see. Brian Peters, what's your pick of the week?
Well, I didn't have one, and then you can't believe I didn't have one. But then one of our wonderful panelists, our regular team member, sent one in and changed his mind. So I'm going to steal Dr. John's.
Love it.
I'm blowing the foghorn anyway.
Oh, the National Hurricane Center's national map of storm surge risk. Yeah, right. And I think John. I think that's a great pick, and I thank you for letting me steal it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I like your second choice too.
I'm about to say now, John. Obviously, if you dump that pick, you got to have a really good pick this week.
It does. From the Space Science and Engineering Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we were talking a little bit earlier about Super Typhoon Nuri. Well, they have put together a 4-day infrared satellite loop of the Pacific, and you can see Nuri generated and move all the way up into the Bering Sea, where it becomes the strongest, the deepest extratropical cyclone on record in the Bering Sea at 924 millibars.
Okay, so we have a question on that. It is the strongest, because I had someone ask me this today, the strongest extratropical only in the Bering Sea?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not the strongest ever on record.
No. Unprecedented.
Bombogenesis.
Monster storm.
Bombogenesis. And I'll say this, if there's any one close to a monster storm, this is it. The problem is it's only affecting people in the Aleutian Islands, directly. But there's no doubt it's a very powerful storm. And I'll say this, John. I used that. I want to say it's an animated GIF, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. It's a large file. It's probably over 100 megs or something. But I plucked that and stuck it in the program I use for the science programs for school kids, and used it today. As a matter of fact, that is a great. It's just mesmerizing to me. Maybe I'm just old, but loops like that fascinate me. And you can study that and see things that you don't see after you watch it the first 10 times. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. In fact, there's some similarities to Sandy from a couple years ago. As you look at this loop, you'll see a shortwave drop across Siberia, and it gets into this storm, and this is what enables the pressure to drop so low. It's fantastic.
Yep. And again, all the links are up on our website, weatherbrains.com. Rick Smith, what's your pick of the week?
Well, as we're recording this is November 10th. Tomorrow's November 11th, and that's the anniversary, not just in Oklahoma, but a large part of the country, a monster cold front. Can I use the word monster?
Monster.
This is a big cold front we're getting tonight, but this one on 11/11/11, November 11th, 1911, set all kinds of records. Records still stand here. We had a record high and a record low temperature set here in Oklahoma City and many other sites in the same day. The high on November 11th in Oklahoma City was 83. The morning low the next morning was 14. So again, another one of these blue northers coming through, and it's we've got a write-up on our website about it, and it's impressive.
Cool. And by the way, Brian, it just dawned on me. This is an anniversary where we are on this date in 2002. It was the Veterans Day tornado outbreak. Remember that one, Brian?
Yes. Yes. That helped push November. The tornado statistics for Alabama pushed the tornado statistics way out of line, and really got us thinking a lot about the fall season.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we had 12 people killed that night in the state, a dozen fatalities. And we had two long-track tornadoes that were side by side, parallel to each other. That was it just dawned on me that's the anniversary date here. All right, Peter, sir, the floor belongs to you. You can pick anything you want. So, since you're giving us these new hats from NASA, the floor belongs to you.
Thank you. I will actually take that pick of the week term very loosely, and I will just say something because I'm not a meteorologist by trade. So I had this very humbling experience during most of our field campaigns. Every field campaigns, usually we bring somebody to forecast for us because there's a lot at stake. You know, you're making decisions whether you'll be sending aircrafts into the air, you know, at 10 a.m. or 11 p.m. or, you know, on that day or the next day. And so weather forecasting is a crucial element. And so we bring somebody who's a dedicated person to do that for us. And we do that usually 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, up to a week in advance. And so for me, somebody who's not a meteorologist, to see that work, the work that, you know, gets into it, it was a very, very humbling experience. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But my kind of, you know, take is that when you go through an exercise like that, you get appreciation for the field, and you know, and unfortunately, you learn that, you know, we have still ways to go, you know, as far as the quality of forecast. That's from my field.
Okay, great. You're an electrical engineer, right?
Yes.
Awesome. I was a double E major for almost 3 years before I changed, and I respect what you do and where you've come from and what you do for the weather community. So a big attaboy from those of us in the operational side. Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you.
All right, Bill Murray, what's your pick of the week?
Yeah, James, a few guests that are coming up on WeatherBrains. One of the great things about the NWA is it gives you a captive audience to run down guests for the show, so we're booked until like 2019 now. But anyway, next week, Keith Stellman, the MIC at the National Weather Service in Atlanta, will be here in Birmingham for the local National Weather Service, National Weather Association chapter meeting, and he'll be talking about the Atlanta Snow Jam. So that'll be Monday night at 6:30 at the Medical Forum in the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center complex. So we'll be looking forward to that, and he'll do this show right after that. And then Monday the 24th, we'll turn the tables finally with Jen Henderson from out at UCAR. She'll be interviewing us for a change. December 1st, we'll have Paul Enriquez from California. He'll be talking about the drought situation out there. Nate has the guest lined up for December 8th. Catherine Miles, Gary Swatkowski will be on the show. Monday the 15th, James Adelot will be joining us from KOKI in Tulsa. He'll be talking about the Broken Arrow tornado last year. or earlier this year. Jesse Harrow from the National Weather Service in El Paso and Tim Bryce, good friends of the show, will join us on the 22nd, and we'll wrap up the year with Greg Carbon and his meteorological memories, along with Tony Rice on December the 29th. My pick of the week is from the group at Millersville University. Mike Yalch, of course, was on the show a few weeks ago and talked about their program Weather Watch, and they just released a new episode last week, and it is about agriculture and wildlife and how it's affected by weather. So you can visit their website, or you can go to the link that Brian will be posting on the WeatherBrains website. Keep those guest suggestions coming. I'll be filling out that backlog as we get into 2015, and we'd love to have your favorite guests on the show as well. So that's it from the guest booking officer corner, James.
Okay, cool. So next Monday night, you will be live in downtown Birmingham with the our friend from Atlanta, right, Bill?
That's correct. It'll be Keith Stellman coming over. He'll spend the night, and he's got a great program that he'll talk about. And a lot of those, a lot of things that Keith will talk about in Atlanta, parallel to what we went through here in Birmingham, for sure.
Yeah, they're very similar. They're different in some ways, but I'd love to hear that because again, that was that turned out to be a humanitarian disaster for our market. And the truth is, if I would have known we would have had 2 inches of snow, I wouldn't expect that to happen. And part of it here involves the ice accretion process and how it's radically different at 19 Fahrenheit instead of 32 Fahrenheit. You know, John and Aubrey, y'all have more experience with this. Down here, it typically snows at 30 to 35, so that was a learning experience for
sure. I mean, even here, we don't often get snows at 19 degrees. You know, even in Virginia, that's not something that commonly happens.
That's true. And when I see something like that happening, I am spreading the word that first snow on a ground that's in the teens is deadly, regardless of where you live.
Right, and it is, and some friends of mine from around the country have shared the experiences they've had with a situation like that. And let me tell you what, the next time it happens in my market, I'll probably be at the cemetery. But boy, I know now what happens with that. Yeah. But since I am the on the lead of the late news here, that means I got to play the old outro music. We have a lot of fun doing the show. Peter, thank you for being on the show. You were a great guest. From NASA, and we appreciate you listening or watching. If you want to get in touch with us, our email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Our Facebook, social media accounts are all up on the same website, weatherbrains.com. And we just thank you for being there. If you listen by iTunes, we love those iTunes comments as well. We typically record the show Monday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. The best place to watch it is live.bigbrainsmedia.com. We're also on James Spann 24/7 on cable down here in my market. Or we know most of you listen via the audio podcast. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Fun show. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Y'all have a great week.
Bye.